among others. He also served as the Attorney General of Nepal and often advised to the Nepalese government on certain academic or the education-related affairs. We are also joining Mr. Zilur Rahman from Bangladesh. He is an award-winning journalist, and he runs a award-winning TV show. It's called, correct me if I'm wrong, Three Dev Matra. And he is also the director of the Center for Governance Dhaka. And he heads the CNN media consultancies firm based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. He also served in the many other capacities. For example, in his bio note, it's mentioned that he worked for the World Bank and UNICEF as well. From Pakistan, Dr. Qibla Ayaz is joining us. He is a very prominent religious scholar, and currently he is the chairman of the Council of Islamic Ideology in Pakistan. Previously, he also served as a vice chancellor of Peshawar University, and he is a very active member of the several international forum working for the interfaith harmony and social cohesion. And he is quite familiar with the geopolitical landscape of South Asia, and he also often comment on these issues. And Dr. Ranga Kalansurya, my old friend, he is joining us from Kabul. Right now, he is the advisor for Asia Pacific Affairs at International Media Sport. This is the one Copenhagen-based media organization. But he also served as Director General at the Department of Government Information in Sri Lanka. And he also holds different diplomatic portfolios in the past. He holds a PhD in journalism and served as a fellow at the University of Oxford on a case study for combating terrorism and discussing peace. And Mr. Sudhindra Kulkarni, a very prolific writer, and if may I say, he is the voice of peace from India. He's also joining us. He has remained the advisor to India's former Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in the Prime Minister office between 1998 to 2014. He had authored the music of Spring Wheel, Mahatma Gandhi's manifesto for the internet age. Currently, he is leading the Forum for New South Asia, and he is primarily working for removing the misunderstanding not only among the South Asian nations, but between China and several South Asian nations. So we have plenty of expertise which can help us to explore the dynamics of the issue. And I'll start from Mr. Zilur Rahman. The religious gatherings were considered among one of the important factor which has spread the coronavirus in different regions. So what was the situation in Bangladesh? Has it had contributed in spreading the infection in your country, Mr. Zilur Rahman?
Thank you, Amit. Thank you so much for giving me such an excellent opportunity as a panelist to discuss the responses by the religious communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is my privilege to be here and express myself. It is quite common that religious communities and political leaders are quite close to the common people in every part of the world. So to reach the common people in this unprecedented pandemic situation, they are our biggest assets. However, in Bangladesh, We first detected the COVID-19 case on 8 March 2020, but the government decided to shut down all public transport across the country from March 26 to April 4. Later, the shutdown was increased eventually. The religious ministry of Bangladesh instructed to halt the congregational prayer on April 6. During the time of countrywide lockdown, religious institutions played an important role to convince the people to stay at home. Imams announced the health instruction from the mosque's mic. Priests from Hindu and Buddhist religious instructed their followers to stay at home. Churches came forward to instruct their followers. In Bangladesh, as the majority are Muslims, the mosque has an important role in maintaining social harmony in society. And during this pandemic situation, the mosque has done great work. In some places, religious institutions came forward with relief to help the needy people. During the Holy Ramadan, it was difficult to convince the people to stay at home and say their prayers, especially Taraweeh at home. But Imams played an important role to convince the people to stay at home and follow the health guideline. It is also an important issue to share that the government didn't face any protest from the religious leaders about the closure of religious institutions. Amit.
Thank you, Zulaiman. This is quite encouraging that religious communities have played a very positive role in Bangladesh. I was reading a few reports. I think it was an ICRC report which is indicating this positive role. But Professor Yuvraj, in my experience, Nepal is the more harmonious country in South Asian region. How the COVID-19 has impacted on the communal harmony in Nepal? Has it created the friction or it has strengthened the communal bond within the communities? Doctor, you try something.
Thank you very much, Amirzi. Actually, we experienced COVID pandemic in Nepal in a very low profile in the beginning. Only very certain areas of the country were affected, and basically not from the north, but we had transmission of these cases from the south and western part, basically from Uttar Pradesh of India and Bihar province of India. So there was as you most of know that India and Nepal do have an open border. We have a open access to each other's country. Serious problem actually occurred at the point when there was pandemic crisis, alarming situation in India. So people started fleeing from India to come to home. And at some points, there were almost 100,000 people crossing border from India to Nepal. And that time it was really critical. The government had kind of rules adopted, keep these people in quarantine for 14 days in the border areas, giving food and everything. But people were not much interested to stay inside. They wanted to rush to the home. But mostly it was done, mobilize security agencies and the crucial role of the institutions related to religion. Most of the people at that time received foods from the religious organizations, the Buddhist monasteries. We have very few masjids in that particular place except the Begans. So they also very active, and Hindu temples. So most of these religious institutions were providing refuge for the people who came from that part of India and remain as people in quarantine in these places. So they were listening more to the religious people then to the government officials. So to be very clear in this sense, like the masses of taking care of this pandemic inform people that it might create a problem. What's better taken by people from the religious leaders from their communities. And there was cooperations among these institutions also. For example, not much critical situations was there, but when there was no adequate rices available in the temple, so masjids were sending the rices to the temples for the food, so this kind of thing. And in place in Virgins, there was in masjid, found a couple of people who had been taking refuge coming from India, had everyone infected with the virus. So within the masjid itself, therefore, the doctors have been called in, and the whole taking care of these people was done by the masjid itself, including medicine and other kind of thing. So I think we did have excellent cooperation among religious groups without any kind of frictions, without any kind of problem, and rather they had a better cooperation, so they were helping each other. So we didn't even see any kind of frictions, neither even a criticism or not even a critical note among them. So they were best cooperating with each other.
Yeah, that's another good news from Nepal. Mr. Ranga, what was the situation in Sri Lanka? Because Sri Lanka is among the South Asian countries which have comparatively low infection rate. What factor has contributed in it? Whether it was the state developed the better mechanisms or the religious communities also cooperated developing this kind of the resilience in Sri Lanka. Mr. Rao.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amir, for inviting me, and good to see you after a long time. And wishes, compliments from Sri Lanka to our other panelists also. We just completed our general elections yesterday, and amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, I think Sri Lanka is the first South Asian country to have elections throughout a pandemic of this scale. Number one, I should give you some context of the COVID-19 pandemic in Sri Lanka. It happened in a context where barely after 1 year of the infamous Easter attack happened in Sri Lanka last year, where almost 300 people died, and massive, very heavy religious sentiment was high in the country. And barely after a few months, 4 to 5 months after the attack, Sri Lanka announced its presidential election. And no need to say that the entire election campaign of all the platforms were ethnically or religiously motivated due to the impact and the context of the Easter Sunday attack in Sri Lanka. So the result of the presidential election was that the Sinhala Buddhist majority camped around one candidate from His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the brother of the former president Mahinda Rajapaksa. So the entire campaign trail was based on ethno-religious platform and nationalistic agenda. So his vote base was entirely dominated by Sinhala Buddhists, and the ethnic minorities or religious minorities were marginalized in another camp. So it was an overwhelming majority that he received. And then after barely 3 months, this COVID-19 pandemic came at a time when Sri Lanka has announced the general elections, the follow-up general election. So everything was politically colored and saw through the political eye in Sri Lanka. So no need to say, when COVID-19 also happened in this context, the health disaster was also looked at through a religious or ethnic minority lens. With Sri Lanka locked down the country in the 3rd week of March, and within a month we saw especially the Muslim community getting badly attacked, of accusing them of spreading coronavirus. After the first 5 patients, unfortunately, whom happened to be Muslims, and then added to that, there was a decision by the government not to allow burial of the bodies of COVID-19 patients and to cremate. So this paved the way for a massive heated debate among the religious communities in Sri Lanka. And I would say, being a journalist, the media has to be blamed in a big way for demonizing the other ethnic communities. When I say the other ethnic communities, who are non-Buddhist, non-Sinhalese, and religious communities. So demonizing the COVID patients was another issue that we had to face by the media. And also the heated debate of cremation or burial was a very clear, significant benchmark of those religious and ethnic. I would say religious, because the main issue came from the Muslims on the issue of burial. So until yesterday, the general elections, the ethnic tension or religious tension in Sri Lanka among Sinhala Buddhists and Muslims was quite high. And even for the general election, we saw a very high nationalistic agenda that ran through the entire campaign, added to COVID-19. So in the Sri Lankan context, it's politics, elections, COVID-19, and nationalism are the keywords. We saw a landslide victory for the Rajapaksa camp yesterday at the elections also. They might get 2/3 majority in parliament. And we saw another nationalistic Buddhist monk getting into parliament, who were leading the campaign against the Muslims. So whether it's COVID-19 or otherwise, the ethno-religious or religious differences in Sri Lanka is expected to continue.
Yeah, thank you, Ranga, for bringing the Sri Lankan context into the debate. I'll ask to Mr. Kulkarni, can we draw some parallel between Sri Lanka and India? And can we safely say that somehow the COVID-19, it has also produced the new forms of the religious hatred in our region? Mr. Kulkarni.
First of all, my sincere and warm thanks to my dear friend Amir Rana Saab for inviting me to this webinar. I have very pleasant memories of coming to Islamabad 2 years ago for a conference that you had organized, PIPS had organized. My greetings to fellow panelists from Pakistan, South Asia. Let me congratulate your institute for one more reason. You know, this is the time when SARC ought to have been active, when there is an unprecedented crisis before the entire world, and especially before South Asia. The platform that is meant for regional cooperation, that is SARC, ought to have been active. But we all know that SARC is in coma. And one can say that SARC is suffering from a virus of a different kind, the virus of trust deficit and the virus of cooperation deficit. Of course, there was a meeting on 24th May when our Prime Minister Narendra Modi and others similarly virtually came together for some kind of a SAARC cooperation to fight COVID, but it was a non-starter. It was a non-starter because there is no real commitment, especially from, I'm very sorry to say this, especially from the largest nation in the region, that is India, to reviving SAARC and making it a strong, vibrant platform for promoting regional cooperation. Of course, at the heart of it is the hostility between India and Pakistan. And unless the bilateral relations between India and Pakistan begin to become normal, we cannot expect SAARC to become active. SAARC has not had a summit meeting for more than 2 years now. And it is in this context that I want to congratulate the initiative that you have taken, the initiative of PIPS. I call it the People's SAARC. The official SAARC is dysfunctional, but People's SAARC, people taking initiative, is something very inspiring. There is a need for hundreds of such initiatives on different topics where we discuss, where we promote mutual dialogue and understanding and find pathways for cooperation, and through all this create a critical mass of public opinion that exerts pressure on our governments, and in this, especially the governments of India and Pakistan, so that SAARC comes out of this coma. Friends, South Asia is really unique. We should be proud of the fact that we belong to this region that is home to all religions in the world. And it is also cradle to several of these religions. There is not a single country in South Asia which is not multi-religious. We should respect, accept, celebrate, and safeguard this multi-religious heritage and promote an atmosphere of tolerance, promote an atmosphere of mutual respect, and above all, be guided by the basic teaching of all religions, and that is to help each other in times of suffering, in times of crisis. And the crisis that we are facing today is truly unprecedented. It's actually twin crisis: the public health pandemic crisis and the resultant economic crisis and the social crisis. I'm sure that people in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and elsewhere in South Asia, and of course all over the world, have seen during the lockdown period the most painful manifestation of the suffering of the toiling people in India, when lakhs of migrant workers were forced to migrate back to their hometowns or home villages. Their plight, their suffering, their hardships that they experienced is something that is etched in the minds of course, people of India and all those who have watched it. So this is the time when we really should come together in a spirit of solidarity, helping each other amongst the South Asian nations, and also helping each other within each of the South Asian nations. And this is why, when I was listening to my fellow panelist, Mr. Ranga from Sri Lanka, I could see several parallels in the Indian experience. How at the beginning of the pandemic in India, a certain painful experience, atmosphere was created to blame the Muslim community for the pandemic. It so happened that just before the pandemic became open and uh, just a few days before the lockdown was announced, there was a big congregation organized by a Muslim organization, and people from various countries, including South Asian countries, had come there. And that became such a big news, as if the foreigners who had come to participate in this congregation were responsible for the spread of the virus. They brought virus, and even motives were imputed that they deliberately brought virus and then spread it in the Indian population. Tablighi Jamaat, that is the name of the Muslim organization. Another parallel that I see in what Mr. Ranga said is the role played, the very shameful role played by the media. I'm sorry to say that the Indian media has begun to exhibit very low standards of professional ethics and integrity in recent times. It was not always so, but during this, at the beginning of this pandemic, Muslims were made to be the culprits, the villains. And this message was deliberately sought to be spread all over the country, including in villages. The good thing is that this memory is now receding into the background. This was at the beginning of the pandemic. Subsequently, religious congregations of other religions, especially Hindus, have also taken place. So it's no longer possible for anyone to say that only one religious congregation is responsible for the spread of COVID-19. I must point out here that this is one negative side of how religious communities or certain religion was stigmatized. But this is certainly not the whole story. This is not even the main part of the story. The main part of the story is how the spirit of volunteerism by the people, by society, by communities, by all religious communities, how it responded to the crisis. Government alone simply could not have faced the magnitude of the crisis. It is only people, their own initiatives, their voluntary initiatives, their service orientedness that has responded to the call of the time in a magnificent way. And here I must say that every single religious community has risen to the occasion. Let me give a few examples that perhaps people in the rest of South Asia and even the rest of the world may not know. You know, we have an organization called Akshay Patra, which is based in Bangalore. These are mainly devotees of Krishna. Akshay Patra, even for the last 20 years, has been engaged in the world's largest midday meal program for school children. It may sound unbelievable to you, but so far they have provided 350 crore midday meals. During the lockdown period, this platform, Akshay Patra, without any distinction, without any discrimination on religious grounds, has provided as many as 7 crore meals to people who are needy. Similarly, even corporate houses, philanthropic bodies have come forward. You know, we have a very well-known corporate house called Reliance. Reliance Foundation alone has provided 5 crore meals during the lockdown period. There are Buddhist, Jain, Sikh, Islamic groups. They all have done mosques, temples, gurdwaras in my own very small way. You know, I am associated with a madrasa in a slum in Bombay. This madrasa is teaching first generation children, especially girls, and promoting quality education amongst the poor people there. Now, during the lockdown period, non-Muslims, that is Hindus and Buddhists and others, they came forward to help this small slum community in their hour of need. One can give, literally, there are hundreds of thousands of such examples. So what I'm saying is that we should distinguish between how certain political parties have responded to the situation, backed by the media, to polarize communities, to polarize the nation for their own political electoral benefits. That is one side. But the innate spirit of togetherness, of being together and helping people in need, that also has come to the fore. And it is this which has to be strengthened. And we should learn from every single country, be it Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, how these great stories of solidarity, so that we create a spirit of togetherness.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. Of course, we have plenty of stories to share, which is positive story. We also have a few positive story in Pakistan. But you had mentioned about the Tablighi Jamaat. This wasn't only blamed in India, but in other part of the world, even in Malaysia or in some North African countries, even in Pakistan. But now this is becoming the part of the past, and gradually we have seen some positive role by the certain religious communities as well. But my question to Dr. Kiblayas, to give to another, bring another aspect into debate, can we say that the marginalized communities were the victim of the COVID-19s, during the COVID-19s, of the majoritarian anger? Can we say that, especially in the Pakistan context, in Afghanistan, and in the larger context of South Asia? Dr. Kulayasa.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Amir Rana Sahab, our delegates, and a very pertinent Rana Sahab, a little different than the rest of the delegates addressed. As far as my understanding is, there was some problem in the beginning of the COVID-19 when it was attributed to the people who came from Iran, and they were Shias, and they visited the mausoleum of Imam Raza, the greatest personality, one of the greatest community. So in the beginning, among the majority Sunni population, there was this came to Iran, to Pakistan. But as far as the non-Muslims are concerned, like the Hindus or the Sikhs or other communities, they were not hinted at. They were not particularly discriminated against. And we did not see any such problem along lines of religions. That aspect was very tactfully and in a very wise manner handled. And this did not happen like we heard this problem, for example, from our friend parts of the world, but in the beginning that I refer to. Is this enough, Amir Rana Sahab, or you want?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sahab. I was basically asking the one question that the marginalized communities were the victim of the majoritarian aggression or the hate during this pandemic. Was this the case? Because this is not new. From the US, to Australia, from China to India, we are seeing that usually the marginalized communities or the minorities blamed for spreading the virus. So what was the reason, factor? Is there any logic behind this, Kibla sir? I think Kibla sir has lost his audio. Back.
You mean in Pakistan or elsewhere? Because in Pakistan, I don't think that. Yeah. Yeah. I have some problem in hearing you.
Yes, I think there is some issue with your mics, Kibla sir. So we can include Dr. Yuvraj Shangula again into this discussion. And to be really specific, has the COVID-19 complicated the existing political challenges in the region? So I'm asking this question in the particular background of your Prime Minister's statement about the Ram and that Lord Ram, that he was born in Nepal. Was it the political statement? Was it we can say it has some context in the background of the COVID, or we can say that this is isolated, or it has other context of these statements?
Thank you, Ranaji, again. Nepal do have a problem of some ethnic conflicts problems, but as we have been talking about, actually, it seems quite unusual and new for us to discuss about religious kind of conflicts because we don't have. This is absolutely a kind of country where we never discuss about religious problem. The cohesion that we have among the religious groups is exemplary. Probably would be best example is I also shared with you when you had been in Kathmandu. In one of the temple in the western hill part of Nepal, management committee of the hill temple is the Muslim. He is the management committee chief. So a Muslim membership out of 11 people, 7 members of management committee of the temple. 7 members come from Muslim community and they are running a Hindu temple actually. So people go to worship, but the management is done by, so you can also see in Kathmandu, in very front of the royal palace in the past, and another big temple, and other in front of that is mosque. So what is an understanding is the mosque does not use mic when prayer, because what they think if there is a mic loudspeaker used, then other temple will have a disturbance, and the temple will not use the speaker to thinking that that would disturb the mosque, is a kind of understanding that we have. So we don't have any kind of religious friction, any kind of religious problem, especially when Hindus and Buddhists, we don't know who is Hindus and who is Buddhist. Sometimes we know when we get married, the girl comes from the family as a bride, her family is a Buddhist, we know quite later on. So we share the same culture, we worship different deities, that's kind of situation. Religion has nothing. With regard to the question that you have, then what kind of conflicts we do have? Definitely we have a problem between hills and Madhesh, west and east. So in this east and west and hill plain, all are together, Muslim, Hindus, Buddhists from Madhesh are in one place, in one group, and Buddhists, Muslim and Hindus all are in one group from the hill, and Western East is something like that. So they're not divided religiously, but more religiously and culturally. One thing. With regard to your question of Ram Janmabhoomi issue, it was a couple of months before, maybe 6 or 7 months before, there was a kind of research-based reporting from an Indian television, NDTV probably, I guess, I forget exactly the name, but it had a very long reporting, finding out where exactly Rama came from. So they also visited Nepal and went to a place called Chitawan, where Sita was supposedly living with Valmiki. And there is a excavation and some temples identified where Valmiki was staying. So he said that actually Rama comes from within Nepal, a place called Thori. So that Ayodhya was not in India, but that was in Nepal. It repeated. And our prime minister, not in a very serious mood, what is like Rama birthplace Ayodhya isn't actually in Nepal. So that was a sharp reaction from Indian television themselves, and it's very learned gentleman Kulkarni said, I mean, sometimes we also very much fed up by these very flimsy and very biased and unresearched kind of media, television media from India. They made this issue so big that Prime Minister was not serious. It was a kind of shade. In terms of religion, we don't see India and Nepal much difference because we go to different temples in each of the country. So people from Janakpur, Sita's birthplace, they thought, I mean, it was very nice. Prime Minister talked about Rama was from Nepal. So Sita was also from Nepal. So there was a little bit discussion, but it was no friction, no connected with COVID. And that remained a couple of days. And Nepalese people also criticized the Prime Minister, why you should talk these kind of things. This is not a way that Prime Minister should talk. So there was a criticism of the civil society. So Prime Minister stopped talking about that. People is talking about that. And Indian medias are still making some news, but that's just a masala for them, but nothing to do with COVID actually.
Yeah, Zulur Rahman, you are one of the popular anchor person in Bangladesh, and you see that the whole discussion has came on the media, and the panelist somehow is blaming media and bailing out the religious community. Do you share this blame that media contributed more, spreading some negative message during the COVID-19 rather than the religious communities? Zulur Rahman.
Thank you, Amit. We don't see any blame game here in Bangladesh. And if you know about the religious gathering, there are a few incidents here. The Religious Ministry of Bangladesh instructed to hold the congregational prayer on April 6. And Bangladesh lifted a month-long ban on mass gatherings and prayers in mosque on May 7, but instructed to follow the health guidelines. Without a few exceptional cases, the religious leaders or communities followed the health guidelines and the instructions given by the Religious Ministry and Islamic Foundation, Bangladesh. For example, in Lakhipur district on March 18, tens of thousands of people gathered for a mass prayer session. And in Brahmanbaria district on April 18th, tens of thousands of people attended a funeral of a religious leader, which was criticized by all, but there was not any blame game, as we saw in India, about the Tablighi Jamaat.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Ranga, social media, I think you qualified to better answer this. Has it added the hatred around this COVID-19 in Sri Lanka or in general in South Asia? How it has contributed?
I should compliment what Mr. Kulkarni said about Tablighi Jamaat, because this particular incident, the congregation that happened in India, by Tablighi Jamaat. It was named as a cause of epidemic in Sri Lanka, because who went to this congregation? And actually, this is a multi-nation issue, because it happened in Malaysia, and then it came to India, and then people start saying it came to Sri Lanka. So we had a very funny saying. I can't remember who said that Corona started in China and exported to America, and then baptized in Europe, and then got Islamized in India and came to Sri Lanka. So this is the narrative that created. If you look at, since you asked me about the social media, the main narrative was done by unprofessional mainstream media, and the mainstream media narrative was picked up by the social media. When you say social media, those are not social media activists, but these so-called trollers, the digital armies of nationalistic agenda. They took it up and they amplified this narrative in the social media platform. In fact, we did, for 3 months, we did a monitoring of disinformation on social media platforms on COVID-19. And we did a YouTube program participating some experts in Sri Lanka on disinformation and social media platforms. And what we found throughout this disinformation monitoring was that the entire religious narrative, anti-Muslim narrative, was masterminded by the legacy traditional media, and was viral or amplified through social media platforms. So this is a well-organized, politically motivated, well-organized campaign using the traditional media as well as social media. And also, since you spoke about these marginalized groups, I would like to say that currently we are doing a program, a series of documentaries on COVID-19 and marginalized groups. And we find that it's not only ethnic groups, there are plenty of marginalized groups of economic hardline and socially. Look at this, the physically challenged community in the country, in the society. You're asking to wash their hands. And those who are using wheelchairs, and, accessibility for the sanitation. So there are so many marginalized groups that we have forgotten them. We have further marginalized them through this COVID-19 fight. So this is not a blame game. We are not blaming any government or any group, but I think we have failed to think as an inclusive society when fighting COVID-19. Again, we are using, I don't know whether it's correct to say, the usual blame game and passing the bug to the other community. I don't know whether it's a South Asian phenomena, but we can see that, traditional, very rudimentary thinking, the cocoons, the bubbles. So it's not me, the other party or other group, the other religion, until it comes to your doorstep. So this is very clear in our society. I don't know whom to blame on this, but every stakeholder in the society is thinking in their own, they are looking at COVID-19 through their own lens. So I don't know whether we are cultured society in that context, or
it's a very interesting observation, Mr. Ahmed. The one side is suits a very structural campaign sometimes, but then at the same time, it's very hard to identify the real motives and sometimes the actors behind these kind of campaigns. Dr. Qibla Saab, we have seen similar situation in Pakistan as well. And initially, when the COVID-19 broke out, it has impacted on the sectarian harmony in the country. And you are the chairman of the Council of Islamic Radiology. And how do you see this, what had happened during the initial phase of the COVID, and how the government and the religious community had gradually overcome this issue. Kibla sir.
Yeah, thank you very much again. As I said in the beginning, there was some problem because the spread of the COVID-19 was attributed to the Iranian people who visited the mausoleum of Imam Raza, the Shia holy personality. But then immediately we had a meeting on 2nd of April, apex body, and in that body there are Shias, Sunnis, and other sects as well. And we all agree COVID-19 has no all over the country through media and newspapers. And then it was followed by the media online conference with the ulama, with the religious clergy, Shias and Sunnis, and all of them agreed on particular SOPs, standard operating procedures. And that actually worked very effectively. The clergy agreed that we should persuade the people not to visit the mosques, not to make big gatherings in the Friday congregations. The Shia clergy also advised in the Muharram days, which is of course coming. But before that, there was some special events of the Shias. So they were advised. The Shia community was advised, which was developed by the efforts of the President of Pakistan and the Council of Islamic Ideology, ministry leaders of all sects, they came together and they crafted this SOPs, the guidelines. And these guidelines worked very effectively in the major cities, including the provincial headquarters. Although there were problems in the far-flung areas, people did not follow it. But then when came the Ramadan, means the fasting month, then again there was another problem of the midnight prayers. But then because of the verdict of the religious clergy, their verdict, to have like 6 feet distance between the followers, between those who are offering prayers. And then, of course, the carpets were removed from the mosques and from the Imam Bargas, the places where the Shias visit to manner. And now we hope positive aspects of this. But where then to refer to, I don't know, because we do not have the electricity. We are working on battery, so our battery is low. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but your voice is breaking.
Amir Saab, do you hear?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Is there any problem? Is there any? Yeah. In the beginning, there was one particular problem, and that was very popular among religious people, that many religious people said that this is not a natural pandemic, but it is a man-made pandemic, and they attributed it to America and to Britain. But with the passage of time, when they saw that things are happening in a different manner, this propaganda also died down after some time.
Mr. Kulkarni, though we have a very positive stories as well all across the region, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, even from Afghanistan. But can we say that in general, the empathy has been lost during this COVID-19 pandemic overall in our societies? Are you agree with this argument? Please open your mic. We can't hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. The loss of empathy is one of the most saddening and alarming aspects of contemporary life in South Asia, indeed all over the world. Empathy is at the very heart of being religious. Feeling the suffering of others. I can mention here that the favorite bhajan is a religious song. The favorite bhajan of Mahatma Gandhi was Vaishnava Janato Tene Kahiye Je Peed Parai Jane Re. It means a truly religious person is one who feels the pain of others, the suffering of others. There is a need to bring empathy. There is already a good deal of empathy in society, but empathy is missing in politics, empathy is missing in governance, empathy is missing in international relations, in diplomacy, etc. And therefore, it is the responsibility of religious leaders, it is the responsibility of civil society leaders to somehow change the basic character of politics in contemporary world and ensure that the politics of our countries is not divorced from the main problems of the common people. And that's why, once again, I want to go back to something that our dear panelist from Sri Lanka said, the marginalized groups. If COVID-19 has really, it has of course affected everyone, rich, poor, everyone. It doesn't know national boundary, it doesn't know religious boundaries, but it has affected the poor the most. But we should also bear in mind that COVID-19 is not the only problem, is not the only public health problem that is afflicting the common people, the poor people. I can give a few examples of my own country, India. So far, 42,000 people have unfortunately died due to COVID-19. But there are other public health issues that take a far bigger toll. Each year, 200,000, more than 200,000 children die of diarrhea. So many thousands of people die of malaria. Our infant mortality rate is very high, even though it is coming down.
And die of hunger as well. And die of hunger as well.
Yeah, and die of hunger. So the point is, and in small or bigger ways, this is the truth about many countries in South Asia and Asia in general, and of course Africa and Latin America. So the time has come to really bring the real issues of the people. If there is any lesson from the COVID-19 crisis, it is that we must take the pain of the people, the problems of the common people at heart with empathy and work together to bring them from marginalization of these issues. We must mainstream them. And this is where I want to make one point, that today the time has come to further strengthen global unity and global cooperation. Every single religion in the world, it teaches the oneness of humanity. Because there is only one God, all the children of God are also one family. They may follow different paths in terms of religions and beliefs, etc., but they all are one family. So dividing humanity in the name of ideology or nationality or race, etc., etc., or even in the name of religion itself, is absolutely wrong, and it is against the spirit of religion. Unfortunately, today, even in the midst of the COVID-19 lockdown, the international situation is moving in a very, very wrong direction. There are calls for decoupling, for disengagement. We are seeing the beginning of a new Cold War. America is doing everything it can to decouple from China. Now, where will all this lead to? We have problems between India and China, India and Pakistan. Now, this is the time when we have to, as think tanks, as civil society organizations, and above all, as religious groups, because they have an influence on the common people. Millions of common people follow religious leaders. So this is the time when they must urge global cooperation, global unity, global solidarity. And it must begin with South Asia. And therefore, I would like to go back to the point that I made earlier. Your initiative, we must strengthen SAARC. And let's have many, many more such initiatives of people's SAARC initiatives, and make it obligatory on the political leadership, the government leaderships of South Asian countries, that they must work in the direction of South Asian cooperation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, indeed, we need such more initiative to activate the SAARC or to increase cooperation within the South Asian nation. And this is my question to Dr. Yuvraj Singh. Is the factors behind that we have very less people-to-people contact collaboration within the South Asian region? And you are the expert, and we know that you are also are leading a few South Asian initiatives trying to bring the youth together, intellectual together. But what is the factor you find that we so far haven't been developed extensive people-to-people contact within the South Asian nation, whether this is the states or the societies themselves have the lack of interest developing such collaboration? Dr. Ibrahim. Your mic.
Thank you again, Rana Sahab. People's SAARC, let's say, it be improved, be one question, and another question might be, why did not it work is another question. My experience is a bit different. 3 years before, just SAARC was coming into a kind of stagnated situation. Then we tried in Kathmandu to break it by bringing member of parliaments from SAARC countries and revive its strength. So there was Nepal's House of Representatives had brought members from all SAARC countries, and we had a very engaged kind of debates that time. They said that the problem is somewhere in executives. Ministers talk and then they refer to the problem with the prime ministers. So the question, what we fail to tell to the young generation is like, few bosses of the political leaders for their interests have been making SAARC a scapegoat and friendly talking like both India and Pakistan have been big problem for that. So there should be a very big debate inside Pakistan and India to revive the SAARC one. That over the last 14 years that we have been doing a very good efforts, bringing students from Pakistan, from India, from Bangladesh, from Afghanistan, from everywhere. So every year, 50 students, 2 times a year, they come to Kathmandu, and we have a bunch of people working in these countries, and we really utilize that very good contact during Nepal and India's crisis of border issue. There were a couple of very interesting webinar done, and there were very unruly kind of media sentiment created both in Nepal against India, and too much anti-Nepalese sentiments in Indian media. So we thought we should talk to these media people not to do that. So there were a lot of students talking in India. How could you talk, I mean, this way? And we were doing the same in here in Kathmandu. So we had been able to reduce the unfounded sentiments. So that's what is collaboration. So my suggestion always is like, we did not probably achieve people SARC because we only rely on NGOs. We always try to work with NGOs, and these NGOs work very effectively because they are funded. So we did not encourage indigenously grown-up institutions in our countries. That's one of the reasons, like academia is better working in peoples-to-people contact in South Asia, as you know, that we just signed an agreement over 12 institutions this year, including looms in Pakistan. So we are doing more activities this year. So in my opinion, people-to-people contact we encourage among academics and students because they interact much more than other sectors. And probably another sectors, as you rightly pointed out, by organizing this webinar yourselves, religion, I really would like to invite, if you people want to come sometime after virus, I would like to invite you to Kathmandu. How nice collaboration among religious groups, religious people. I mean, how effectively they work. So there is no marginalization. I mean, we do have problem. We have a regional problem, we have ethnic problem, but we don't have a religious problem. So we have a kind of a body of the religious people, like Sikh people, Islamic people, Buddhist people, Christians, and Hindus. They have a body. So whenever there is a problem, some problem occur, before it becomes intensified, they immediately meet and they whole organize the meeting and they go to the spot and they start. So the first time in Nepal before COVID 3 months, in a very small issue in one of the places, a small is of people inhabited dominantly by Islam and another village by Hindus. They had the small fight. So next day, all these religious leaders have been in that place and they had done. So this is remarkable. So our leaders do not think of religious problem. So back to your question again, how to develop contact. I think 4 sectors that we have about. 1, academia, student, religious leaders from the countries, and getting more indigenously grown-up institutions to communicate rather than money-making NGOs. So money-making NGOs is a big problem, in fact, doing this kind of thing. So everywhere they go and participate, they don't participate for the sake of making SARC effective, but they are paid, therefore they go over there. So we made a mistake in the past. So that's where I see the problem.
Yeah, thank you. I'll back to you, Mr. Kulkarni, but I think this is a very interesting phase of the discussion we have entered. I'll go to first to Dr. Qibla Ayaz to get his response about, because he interacts with the religious communities all across the world for the religious harmony, for the social cohesion. So have you, Dr. Qibla Sahab, found any, have you thought about such collaboration on South Asian level? Can this cooperation within the religious communities somehow can contribute more positive role, reducing the tensions within the South Asian nation? Dr. Qibla Ayaz Sahab. Then I'll go to the Mr.
Yeah.
Just Rana Sahab.
Yeah.
Sorry. May I interrupt? I'm extremely sorry
Please.
to interrupt you. But you know, I have to request you to relieve me because I have some other programs.
Yeah, this is only the last 2 minutes left.
Okay,
I wanted your response.
Okay.
On the
sure.
Collaboration with the religious community.
Amirana Sahab, very good question, and I on this will agree with Professor Kulkarni. It is very true. Religious harmony and interfaith harmony can take place if there is good relationship between India and Pakistan, and the whole South Asia can become like a cradle of interfaith harmony. People SARC, as he coined this term, is needed, and People SARC will be like a vehicle for promoting interfaith harmony and intersectarian harmony in the region.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kubila Ayasa, Mr. Kulkarni, Professor Yuvraj Sangula, Mr. Rana Glensoria, and Mr. Zibur Rahman from Dhaka. Thank you very much for your celebration. And it was the first of the People's Saab of our series, because we are planning to have a long series of these events to discuss the various common issues of South Asian nations. And next month we will come with some other issues to discuss, and we will try to make effective this People's Saab. Thank you very much for your time. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very nice discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any session,